Well, to kick this panel off, Ashley, would you mind defining nuclear verdicts and to tell us what kinds of jury trials are most likely to end up with these high dollar payouts?
I love this question. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, full disclosure, I joke, I'm a recovering trial lawyer. So I am a trial nerd. So a lot of my perspective is coming from the perspective of a trial lawyer. And that's sort of the lens that I'm going to be sharing the information with you all today. I'm also a bit of a nerd. And so I have geeked out over the data surrounding nuclear verdicts. And specifically, we just finished a deep dive into 100 real nuclear verdicts from across the country, doing a line-by-line analysis of the trial transcripts and the closing argument transcripts to look for patterns. So I'm really excited that our book is coming out in a couple of weeks. So I'm so excited to be able to share some of that data. So just to kind of contextualize where I'm coming from and my seat is very trial focused and also nerd focused. So sorry, and you're welcome. So I love that you asked this question to kick us off, because I think everyone in our industry kind of has a different definition of what a nuclear verdict actually is. And so I love talking about what that definition really looks like, because I think it's important that we kind of get on the same page and orient around what a nuclear result actually looks like. So I didn't tell Dave or Teresa that I was going to ask them this, but I would be curious, before I give my definition from a trial lawyer's perspective of what a nuclear verdict looks like, I would love to hear Dave and Teresa. Again, sorry, I didn't let them know I'm going to be turning to you. Immediately upon getting the ball, I'm going to punt it back to you all. But I would love to hear kind of what your perspective is on what a nuclear verdict is. If you have like a specific dollar threshold that you look at, or some other consideration based on your experience and where you're seated.
Well, great question, Ashley, and happy to take that. Just a little bit about where the lens I'm coming from. I am an attorney by training, but I am strictly coming from an insurance broker perspective. But I also have spent over a decade on the carrier side in claims. So I've seen way too many things that come across my desk in a different life. When I think of a nuclear verdict, I'll put aside D&O because I don't feel like we see D&O nuclear verdicts, but just generally speaking, it's an exceptionally large jury award, multi-millions of dollars, exceeding, I would say, probably at least $10 million, that exceeds what I think most people would expect in terms of damages in that case. So that's, I guess, off the cuff, what I would think of.
That's so good. Especially because I didn't give you any heads up. Dave, what do you think?
Well, first, thanks to Teresa for going first and answering that. But yeah, I'd say historically, as a risk manager, we tend to think of nuclear verdicts as outsized awards versus what we think a case is actually worth. So I think the 10 million threshold Teresa threw out is a really good one. But it seems like most things these days with inflation, the numbers just keep getting bigger. And as the numbers of these verdicts, continues to increase, I think we have to reset what we think is nuclear, because some of the things that were nuclear 5 years ago don't really feel nuclear anymore.
Oh my God, I know. It's crazy. Sometimes when I ask this question, I'll hear it used to be that I would just hear anything over 10 million is nuclear. And now sometimes when I ask that, I'll hear anything over 100 million is nuclear. And I'm like, okay, if that isn't an indicator of where we are and how depressing, I don't know what is. I love your answers. Mine was going to be the exact same. I feel like, to me, assigning an arbitrary dollar figure doesn't really cut it, because for all of the reasons that you both have just highlighted. The key to me is that disproportionality, where it's out of whack with the facts of the case, what you would expect that to go for. It's sort of like, when our Supreme Court defined pornography, it's like, I know it when I see it. It's the same kind of thing, where it's like that gut hit of that is completely out of whack. That's disproportionate. Often we see, the non-economic damages, the pain and suffering awards are disproportionate to the economic damages in the case. That's kind of like a good benchmark. And the reason I think that distinction is so important is that, I guess I should preface and say, I'm not going to spend the entire time depressing everyone, but I am going to start there. And then I do have some solutions, but I am going to start there. I think it's important, that distinction, because first of all, at Tyson and Mendes, we try to track nuclear verdicts as much as we can. But to Dave's point, is a $3 million verdict making the news anymore? When was the last time that you all saw a headline that was plaintiff gets $3 million. You know what I mean? That's chump change anymore. I mean, I would take that chump change. Let's be clear. Like, it's not actually chump change, but it doesn't register in the consciousness of what is nuclear anymore. So when we talk about, but a $3 million verdict could still be nuclear if it's disproportionate to the facts and injuries of that case, right? But we're not even knowing about it. So when we talk about the problem of nuclear verdicts and we look at how many there have been and the severity of them, I mean, in 2024, it was over $31 billion with a B awarded in nuclear verdicts. Okay, but those are only the nuclear verdicts that we know about. So again, this is where I'm depressing everybody. The problem is actually a lot bigger than we're realizing, because lower verdicts that would still be disproportionate and therefore still be nuclear are not really registering anymore. The other reason that I like that distinction, that it really is less about a specific dollar figure and more about that disproportionality, is that to me, it really drives home pretty much anything can go nuclear anymore. I mean, a lot of times when I talk to people, they'll be like, oh, well, I never will touch anything $20 million. That's, that's not where I sit. That's not my case. And it's like, okay, but buddy, $2 million could still be nuclear if it's disproportionate. So it kind of drives home. This is everybody's problem. It's driving social inflation, and it's across every seat in our industry. It is everyone's problem. So that's kind of, I love that both Teresa and Dave highlight again. we didn't talk about this. They were not plants that I was like, say this thing so I can tell you you're right. But that definition is I think is exactly right. And I would encourage our industry to move away from a specific dollar figure as a flag for what is nuclear, because the key for me is really that disproportionality factor.
Unlock your potential with lessons from the best in the business. This exclusive event is hosted by Elizabeth Blossfield, Chad Hemingway, Andrea Wells, Alan Laman, and Ezra Amacher. Visit riskyfuture.com to view the on-demand videos.